What is happening out there, rotoscouts baseball fans? Welcome to a Monday show, gang. Start of the second to last week of the baseball season. Went pretty damn quick in my mind. Can't believe it's already September 16th. Especially like all of August, half of September. Most of July just kind of went by in a rush. Good baseball season, though. A lot of fun. We've had some good shows. We've had a lot of discussions throughout the year. Couple weeks left to talk about, so the diehards I know are still out there. Been smaller crowds the last few weeks since football started. Not surprised by that whatsoever for the football fans. For the people who are doing both, we're going to be on at 6:30 today for a football showdown show for the Falcons and Eagles game later on tonight. Looks like a good one there. Been all over showdown results. I had yet again the second best lineup last night. Came in 8th, tied with a bunch of people. Was jockeying back and forth for the first place tie with a bunch of people. So we had the second best lineup again, but just like all over it. Right there. So looking to get over the top tonight in Showdown. But we'll be going through sims and lineups and all the different individual players. That'll be at 6:30, which means 4:19 right now. We're going to take a good look at this baseball slate, but we are going to try and make pretty good time. We're starting next week's NFL show now. Certainly not, my friend, but keep an eye out. We will be, hopefully this week, kicking off some, during the week shows and breaking it down a little bit in a more sane fashion. That's my plan. I have no family obligations. I have no plans other than being here for DFS this week. So that's good. The paywall is going to come slamming down any moment, probably in the next 24 hours or so. I know I've been saying that, but it's really time. So you guys got the first 2 weeks of NFL through. And now we're going to start talking about a little subscription. But that'll be coming down in the next couple of days. Fair warning, but keep an eye on that. Lone Wolf, it was again, it wasn't, since we were tied a bunch of ways splitting 8th place money, it wasn't a big payout, but it balanced out the day. For the entire football day, I basically broke even. I had a lot of good lineups. If we had gotten a better game out of CJ Stroud and his cohort there, again, in the night game on FanDuel, I had a really, really good Stroud stack that ended up finishing, I think, like 300 and something or 200 and something in the FanDuel main millie. But it had such a great trajectory. I needed 10 more points apiece out of Stroud, Nico, and Schultz, just depending, and it didn't have to be out of all three of them. It could have been any one of them, but I needed another 30 points out of that trio, and it didn't come up. But if that team scores 28 points last night, I come damn close to winning the millie, so one of those, but yeah, basically a break-even Sunday overall, and just that showdown chaser. And again, we look at, and we'll talk about this more in a little bit on the football show, but we look at those ace mine results, and that's kind of how I've been going about it. I haven't been playing full slates. I've been grabbing 20, 30, 40 lineups, whatever, and throwing them into those showdowns, and just taking exactly what I do on the shows, where I'm taking out the top dupe lineups and just going with the best ROI off of working off of minimizing dupes as best as possible. And I've had contenders literally every showdown slate, so it's the right way to go. But anyway, we'll get back into that. Eight game. Pick hand wave back at you, buddy. 8 game had a good weekend. I saw a tweet with a little note from me in it. I appreciate that little shout out, and shout out over at our guys over at Awesemo. Looked like a nice, profitable little. What was that? The main slate on DK 8 game that you took down a solid little win. I think it was like one for like 1,500 in first place, and then I think there was a second one in there. But either way, congrats, buddy. It's awesome. Love to see it. Lone Wolf likes the Detmers and Imanaga pairing. So let's dive into this baseball slate, because we do need to make pretty decent time. It's 4:22 now, so I'm going to try and get us up and out of here in an hour and change today. So we're going to see if I can keep that promise. Starting things off, I will put a hard out on this show at like 6 o'clock. Let's put it that way, because I do need 15, 20 minutes to just finish up the setting up the dashboard for the football show and kicking off the sims and everything so that they run. So the Nats and the Mets to start things off. Mets going to be without Frankie Lindor at least today, and hopefully not the rest of the week, because I don't have a good replacement in my Dynasty lineup. So he's going to just be in there. Went for an MRI today. He's been playing through back pain, was out on Saturday, came back on Sunday, just lasted an inning before he had to come out of the game. So not looking great for him. They called up Luis Angel Acuna, but he's not in the confirmed lineup for the Mets. But regardless, we'll talk about those guys. It is Jake Irvin on the hill for the Nats, pushing a 4.38 implied total toward a slightly diminished but still good Mets team. Sean Manaea, pretty good pitcher going up against the Nationals, 3.22 implied total for the Nats. Manaea's had a good season overall. I think we can consider him, but the Nats, always a little bit low strikeouts, some threatening bats against lefties, maybe not the ideal target on the slate. Dodgers and the Braves, a 7.5 run total, pretty low total between two pretty high-end teams. It's Max Fried on the mound for the Braves. We know how good Max can be at limiting runs, limiting power, has a little bit of an impact on the Dodgers. Individually, they still project well because there's not that much you can do about that. But collectively, the stack, I knocked it down a couple pegs on a sub-4 total, 3.91 implied total for Los Angeles. Braves checking in at 3.67 against Yoshi Yamamoto. He's probably going to go 5. I gave him 5 and 80 and change pitch, kind of an idea. Last time out in his return to action, he'd been out since June 15th. He went 4, faced 15 hitters, struck out 8 of them, gave up 3 hits and 1 unearned run to the Cubs. Liked him to come out and have the potential to do at least similar things against the high strikeout Braves lineup. Phillies and the Brewers, it's Aaron Savali on the Brewers side. He looks pretty targetable with some Phillies bats. They're checking in at just 4.07. We've got some September totals. Remember, these are slightly lower overall totals that you might otherwise expect in some spots just because of September baseball, September weather. It's not exactly the dog days anymore. Ranger Suarez on the mound for the Phils. Decent shot for him, 4.01 implied total for the Brew Crew on the other side. Suarez is very good. He's had 2 out of 3 since returning, 2 out of the 4 starts since his return have been just okay. 4 earned runs in 4 innings, 4 earned runs in 5 1/3. But 2 good starts around the edges of that, and just a lot of ability overall. So Rangers on the board, we're probably looking at 5 and change. I definitely think he's at least interesting and worth consideration. Tigers at the Royals, 8 run total in that one, 3.75 implied total on the Tigers side. They've been frisky in the second half. Very interesting, but they're going up against Seth Lugo, who I continue to think he's pitching above his head, but we're running out of time for that to reverse. 30 starts in, he's still looking pretty good. Hit a couple bumps in the road at the beginning of the second half. By and large, has corrected them. A couple really good 7-inning starts, 3 7-inning starts in a row. He's given up 2 earned runs across the 21 innings combined. 9 strikeouts, 10 strikeouts, and a 4 strikeout game against the Astros, the Guardians, and the Yankees. So definitely gets a little bit of a reprieve here, pitching up against a improving but still not great Tigers team. And then on the Detroit side, it's Reese Olson making his return to action. He hasn't pitched since July 20th. Is a good pitcher, was having a fairly successful year. He's not the highest strikeout guy in the world, but decent at going 6 innings, accruing some time. We'll see what it looks like. He only went 3 innings, 2 rehab starts. He went 2 innings once, 3 innings another time. So I put him at around 5. We'll see if he gets to even that level. Don't love targeting the Royals anyway. Seems kind of a scratch. 4.35 implied total for the Royals. The A's, the Cubs, 3.39 implied total for the Athletics. They're going up against a pretty talented Shota Imanaga on the mound. Still showing a little bit of quality, a little bit of power up at the top end of that lineup where they've been really improved, but I greatly prefer the Imanaga side of that one. And then the Cubs drawing a pretty high total, 4.71 implied runs with the third highest on the board, going up against Joey Estes, who's entirely gettable. The Pirates and the Cards. Paul Skeens on the mound for the Pirates, looking pretty good up at the top of the board. 3.31 implied total for the Cards. 3.77 on the other side for the Pirates. They're facing Andre Pallante, who is not particularly good, not particularly adept at creating giant DFS scores, but he's very good at keeping the ball in the yard, keeping the ball on the ground, and limiting opposing runs. Pittsburgh, kind of middle of the road, mediocre offense anyway, so don't know that it's a go-to spot to roster some Pallante shares. We'll give them a look, but I definitely think it's not a great spot for Pirates bats. Coors Field, Diamondbacks, Slate leading 6-3-0 total on the board. Monsters in an 11-run game. Prime matchup against Antonio Senzatella, who hasn't pitched in the show since back in May. They've got Merrill Kelly on the mound for the Diamondbacks. He's got the Rockies checked under 5 runs, which is kind of interesting. They typically will pop up around 5, but they're slightly below. Definitely will always consider some Rockies bats. Kelly, not the best pitcher in the world. He's fine. He's a little somewhat above average pitcher. But I think we could consider at least some Rockies bats with that pretty healthy second highest on the board total on the other side of the Coors game, and we're probably not looking at pitching on a relatively deep slate. Jonathan Cannon is a target for bats in the White Sox and Angels game. He's pitching for the White Sox. On the mound for the Angels is Reed Detmers, who looks pretty solid up against the White Sox. 3.41 implied total for them. Detmers has some great strikeout stuff. 10 strikeouts to against the Dodgers is a monster 2 starts ago. Came back off that. 8 strikeouts against the Twins. Looking pretty sharp on the mound. Definitely going to consider some Detmers. And then the final game of the night is only available on DraftKings. For some reason, FanDuel doesn't have it, but it's Astros and Pods, 2 pretty good teams, but it's Yu Darvish and Spencer Arrighetti, 2 decent pitchers on opposite ends of their careers. So you can see what Vegas thinks of it. Just an 8-run total there, 3.95 implied total for the Astros, 4.13 for the Pods. So seemingly targetable. And let me actually just drop a quick placeholder in for this so I can actually play this contest. Love getting to the end of the show and being like, I just spent 2.5 hours talking about a slate I'm not going to be able to play. So it's an interesting pitching board. I'll pull it up and you guys can look it over while I'm just dropping this in there. Of course, it's unsorted. Sorted by DK. Skeen's kind of alone up at the top there. Separated by not all that many points, honestly, over Reed Detmers in a much better matchup. Not that the Cardinals are anything that's going to intimidate Paul Skeens. But, we're at the point where Skeens has pitched a lot of innings on that young arm. We've seen a couple teams get him a little tiny bit more than he might have been vulnerable earlier in the year. But still dominating. 11.5 on FanDuel, 9,800 on the DraftKings slate. Looks very believable up top. Again, Detmers just very interesting with the strikeout upside. Best matchup in baseball. Only 8,500, 7,700 is kind of insane for that matchup. So Reed Detmers going to be the chalk of the day, I think, in that spot on both sides. Probably your chalk SP1 over here. Probably your chalk SP2 over there. Tons and tons of value. Pairing those two guys right off the top seems pretty straightforward and obvious. You can also go this direction because Imanaga is really good in a pretty good matchup against the A's. Lugo, same story. You can go to him for a little bit cheaper. Pair him with Detmers for a little bit less against the Tigers, which is an equally gettable squad to these two. These guys are offset. These guys are worse than these two teams are. Both of these teams are improved, and they've had better second halves. So it's not as safe a spot, as elite a spot, but still very, very targetable with pitching. Yamamoto, that is a 5-inning projection. He's going there, but I don't know that we're getting any ceiling on top of it because I think he's coming out after 5 after the injury, kind of bringing him along slowly. There are just a lot of strikeouts, and he's very, very good against that Braves lineup. So if you want the 16 points for 9,000, 9,500 across sites, you could probably book it by using that square. But you're probably not getting 40. You're probably not getting 20. You're probably not getting 0 ceiling on top of what's right there in front of you. So I don't love that play. I don't think there's much to it, and I think everybody around him on both sites is better. Sean Manaea, 10.8 is a little bit uncomfortable. He projects just fine. He's having a good year, but paying that much when I could just go to Lugo against Detroit, when I could go to Imanaga against Oakland, and specifically Detmers at 85. On DraftKings, Manaea is only 85. That makes a lot more sense to me. That makes him a go-to. That's an easy option to pick up. I like him just as much as Lugo at 87 on DraftKings. Yamamoto for 95 is not anywhere near as good as Manaea for 85 on that slate. So definitely like the Manaea play on DK, a lot less so on FanDuel. I could see a lane where it succeeds just because he is a decent strikeout pitcher. He's capable of going 6 or 7 clean innings, booking the win, but not a great price. Fried for 94, 84. Great price on DraftKings for his ability to spike a ceiling game, go 9 innings even against the Dodgers. Max Fried is very good. 94 on FanDuel. The thing with him is he's fairly low strikeout on his own, and then the Dodgers compound the low strikeout problem. So it's just a matchup issue. He's a talented enough guy to get through it. Much more playable on DraftKings. Suarez, definitely worth going to. 92, 9,000. Probably a little less comfortable on the DK slate at 9. Just with several 8s and a big 7 above him. He's playable there, but less appealing. 92 on FanDuel. I think he's more in the mix with those other guys. Does have a little bit of ceiling on top of the 26 points into the 30s, 30 kind of a range. Just on the idea that he could, complete the 6th inning, pick up the quality start. Nothing should say that he couldn't since he pitched into the 6th in the last start. Kelly at Colorado seems like a stretch. 8,300 on FanDuel. 6,800 is a different story on DraftKings. That easily puts him on the board. I honestly see nothing wrong if you wanted to take a little bit of risk upside and put Merrill Kelly in a lineup at 68 paired with Reed Detmers at 77. You're saving quite a bit of money there. By the same token, Reese Olson is maybe a little bit safer version of that at 7,000. Jake Irvin, same thing at 61. And honestly, Savali at 66 is not completely terrible in that spot, even with a very good Phillies lineup opposing him. So any one of those guys from the bargain bin on DraftKings, they're a lot less appealing on the one starter site. I see no real reason to go to Kelly at 83 when Detmers is 85. Olsen at 88. We're probably not getting enough depth, and it's a low strikeout KC opponent. Jake Irvin for 76. Again, I'd probably just go to 85 for Detmers and sacrifice a bat if I had to. He's on the board because he's not terrible, but that Mets lineup is good even without Lindor. Savali against Phillies at 82 on FanDuel seems like a bit of a stretch. It's playable, but it's not great. Arrighetti for 82 on the DraftKings slate. Playable. Tough matchup against the low strikeout Pods. Probably not an ideal spot with all those value options on the board. Darvish is kind of the same thing. 88, 8,000 against the low strikeout Astros team. So, or 8,000 only. The 88's not on the FanDuel slate. So I think you just kind of consider those guys just late night mixers, have a couple few of both of them, but neither looks overly appealing. It's just kind of a rough matchup. I do think it's a situation where those guys probably limit the offenses on each side, and the offenses kind of limit them just with the low strikeout nature. So kind of a wash across all four corners in that one. Palante is good enough to put up a decent score around these median 74-72, but not a lot of ceiling. He's very low strikeout. Just going to limit the Pirates' offense most of the time you roll this one. Joey Estes against the Cubs is a no. Jonathan Cannon against the Angels seems like a no. And Antonio Senzatella at Coors against the league-leading offense is a no. Power says the NFL and injuries are just getting stupid. Alvin Kamara with the highest fantasy points, 47 on DFS, is even dumber. Well, I mean, you got to award the guy for the 4 touchdowns that he did score. Like, it's not DFS's fault that Alvin Kamara scored 4 touchdowns yesterday. That's the scoring system. Kamara was a good play. He projected fairly well, was very low owned in what is a good offense. Anybody that thinks the Saints aren't going to be at least a decent offense this year is fooling themselves. I was not expecting a monster 4 touchdown game. I would have had a lot more of them if I was. But, yeah, I think the complaint for NFL, for me, is the injuries. It's just stupid. Before long, it'll be, especially with technology, as I've been saying, it'll go to a touch league. Everybody will wear touch-sensitive jerseys, and if you get 2 palms on them, they're down. If you get a finger, it doesn't count. Finger plus a palm is like, I don't know. As opposed to season long? Oh, see, I like DFS so much better than season long. I hate season long fantasy football. I play it just because it's there, but I am not a fan. I don't like games where like the waiver wire matters maybe twice a season, the entire season. The entire thing is focused on the draft, which is luck based on where you land in the first round anyway, and the first 2 rounds are going to be your most important 2 picks. And then it becomes entirely luck-based and with stupid shit around injuries. If it was a touch league and the injuries were much more limited, I'd be much more into season-long. I really don't. I'm not a big season-long fan in fantasy football. That's it. Again, I'm in like 7 leagues. Clintwood took this season off from season-long, and it's been so peaceful. Yeah, I hear you. So yeah, it just, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of something that's entirely like there's no way back from taking an injury to one player. You know, you lose your first or second round running back and you don't have a good waiver priority because you picked high, you're done. That's your season. Week 1, McCaffrey. Everybody who took McCaffrey 1-1 this year, you're done. Your season's over. It's just true. Unless you got Mason, you're just done. And even if you did get Mason, you're filling that 1-1 with Jordan Mason, who is very good, but is not going to fulfill that destiny. Yeah, season long just kills me. Maybe I'm griping because I'm not out to a great start in season long. I don't know. I actually had a good week 1. Week 2 was a little bit less. A couple of my leagues, I accidentally, I didn't get to it because we were doing shit for this, and I completely forgot to that I even had. I forget who it was. Whoever didn't play last Thursday at running back. So I had him. 2 of my lineups had him in it. But yeah, I got fairly smoked this week. Anyway, Sean Manaea, 8,500, 10-8. Again, looks a whole hell of a lot better on the DraftKings slate for that price. Manaea is a good pitcher. Talented lefty, 25.6% strikeouts, a 3.35 ERA. Betrayed a little bit by the 405 xFIP, but this is still not terrible when we're considering a guy at this kind of a price. Solid strikeout rate. He walks a few too many, but the whip isn't completely terrible. He's good at managing hits. He's good at keeping guys off base by and large. 11.8% swinging strike rate. He can punch his way out of trouble fairly effectively. Not bad, not egregious for contact or home run output. Stuff Plus doesn't really love the arsenal, but it doesn't matter. He's fairly effective with it. We all know Sean Manaea can get nailed from time to time, but overall this season, we're dealing with mostly 3-run games throughout the game log. Last time out, 1 earned run in 6 2/3, 8 strikeouts. Did walk 4, but it didn't burn him. 6 2/3 of 4-run ball, 3 hits, 2 walks, 9 strikeouts, but allowed 2 home runs to the Reds the start before that. A solid 7-inning start before that, 5 strikeouts, 7 shutout innings. He hasn't failed to pitch into the 7th inning in his last six starts. He had a 3-inning start before that against Seattle. I'm not sure what happened. That was the inefficient game. Yeah, he struck out 3, walked 5, gave up 3 earned runs on 4 hits in just 3 innings facing 18 hitters. But the 2 starts before that, he also went 7 innings. So we're getting a lot of reliable depth out of Manaea. Only in the recent stretch of 6 starts into the 7th inning, he completed it 3 times. He went 6 2/3 all 3 of the other times. He failed to get the quality start just once. That was in the second 2 starts back when he gave up 4 to Cincinnati. But he's been dynamite in all of those games. There's 2 9-strikeout games in there, an 11-strikeout game against the Diamondbacks of all teams, and an 8-strikeout game. So when I say that Manaea is good and pitching well, I really mean it. Nationals coming in with an 18.4% strikeout rate for this projected version of the lineup. Not the best target overall. But Manaea, oh good, we got the confirmed. But Manaea is capable of getting these guys. We've got a couple young lefties in Jose Tena and James Wood in the lineup for the lefty to face. They do have some good right-handed bats. Dylan Cruz is an exciting young rookie, but he's just finding his footing, and he hasn't exactly been great in the show so far. Wood is good, but lefty-lefty, and he's striking out nearly 30% of the time. Slashing 273, 364, 429 is quite good over his first 280 plate appearances, but there are strikeouts in that bat. Juan Yepez is a low strikeout option with a little bit of power from the right side. But if Juan Yepez was going to be anybody, I think we would know by now. He's had a good 200 plate appearances, but he's kind of non-threatening. He is low strikeout. There might be some bat on ball there, but Juan Yepez is not the guy who's going to scare Sean Manaea off the mound. Same thing with Andres Chaparro. Chaparro is a $3,200, $2,700 first baseman, slashing 231, 292, 452. He has hit 4 home runs in the limited action. He's only striking out 19.5% of the time, but is not exactly blasting the ball when he's made contact. The 221 ISO, the 4 home runs, it's a little results-based, and he's still fairly gettable. So, again, another hitter that I just don't think is all that intimidating for Manaea to get through. Picks up a little bit more strikeout with Jose Tena, who's only at, who is at 304, 339, 426, but only in 121 plate appearances. Hasn't shown really all that much power off of an 11.4% barrel, 51.1% hard hit. Just a 122 ISO. He has managed 3 home runs, but hasn't really collected a lot of extra base hits. The 5 steals are nice. There's a little bit of fantasy scoring there. If you're considering Nationals bats, your priority bats are right through here. Those top 5 are your priorities. And then you get a little bit of mix and match. Ilimaro Vargas is not terrible against lefties. He fills 4 positions for 21 on FanDuel. He fills 2 for 25 on DraftKings. But he's also nobody's idea of a star DFS contributor. He's 20 points below average for run creation. He's hit 1 home run this year, stolen 8 bases in 280 plate appearances. Keibert Ruiz is just very low strikeout, puts the ball in play like crazy, has 13 home runs in the season, but just a 143 ISO, a 77 WRC+, doesn't hit the ball particularly hard this year. Hit it a little bit harder last year, but even last year it wasn't all that great for contact. Those are low contact numbers. He's just very low strikeout, very low walk, so a ton of balls in play. Jacob Young, just a speedster, 32 stolen bases on the year, despite just a 318 on base. For a while, that was below 300. It's improved a little bit, but not enough to get his WRC plus above average yet, just 13 points below. No real power to speak of, but another low strikeout, put the ball in play, beat him with your speed kind of a player. Nasim Nunez at the bottom of the lineup, 2,000 across sites. No real output outside of the 273, 86, 297 slash line, which is pretty good. Hasn't exactly hit the ball hard. Has been fairly low strikeout, high walk in his limited plate appearances. So let's mix and match your way down through the bottom 4 in this lineup. It's really about the top 5, and to me, it's not a great spot. Manaea really doesn't get dinged all that often for power. He really is decent at finding strikeouts. So I think at worst, he limits this team to 3 or 4 runs. Has a pretty decent, 6 and change, 7 inning start, and it favors Manaea. Jake Irvin at 71-76 comes in with a 4.19 ERA, a 3.95 xFIP, 20.6% strikeouts, decidedly average numbers across the board, but he's not bad. There's no one thing in here where you're like, oh, that's really bad. The 9% barrels is probably the worst mark on this entire thing. 3.69% home runs, though. It's manageable. It's higher than you'd want it, but it's manageable. Lower than you want it, but manageable. Perfectly reasonable walk rate. The whip is okay. The xFIP is slightly better than the ERA, which is a good sign. He's given you 172 innings in his 30 starts. Last time out, Irvin went 6 against the Braves, gave up 1 earned on 2 hits, struck out 5. Totally decent start. Booked a quality start, got the win. 5 innings against the Pirates, the start before that, it was the bad version of Irvin. He gave up 6 earned runs on 7 hits, struck out 4 and walked 3. Terrible start. It's terrible the outing before that as well. 7 earned runs on 8 hits over 4 2/3, 6 strikeouts against the Cubs. Decent one against the Braves, a 4-run start against the Phillies, a 5-run start against the Giants. There's a lot of bad in there, and the good is basically I gave up 3 or 4 runs. I had an average day. Even for the money, 71-76, there's not a ton of ceiling with Irvin because of his low strikeout nature. The Mets might push a couple extra his way. This version of the lineup has a 24.7% strikeout rate. That's pushed up slightly by that 33% there. Everybody with at least a decent sample lands at 23.7. It's a gettable, but not incredibly so Mets lineup, and they're very threatening. There's plenty of power there, and it's a pitcher who can give up power. So between the two sides, I prefer the Mets bats, but I do think Irvin's in the mix. I wouldn't take him out of my player pool on the mound. If we're looking down the Mets lineup, Jose Iglesias slides up to the leadoff role with Lindor out. We do not have Luis Angel Acuna in the lineup, which is baffling. But Iglesias has had a good 235 plate appearances. He's getting on base at a 370 clip, so he fills that leadoff role admirably with what he's done this season. Whether any of that is predictive for go forward, I really question. He's a low strikeout, low walk, put the ball in play kind of a hitter, though. 13.2% strikeouts, 4.7% walks. His creator runs 30% better than average. If you're considering Mets, you definitely put him in. He fills multi-position. He's cheap at second base, which is where you'd want him. So I have no issues with it, but he's not a draw to the Mets. Jesse Winker's interesting in the 2 spot, 35-28. He's got 14 home runs, 14 stolen bases. He gets on at a 364 clip, 123 WRC plus. I probably would have just gone lead off Winker. Just lead off, move everybody up 1 spot, or lead off Winker into Nimmo and go lefty-lefty to lead. Iglesias is just a bit of a weak hitter who relies a little bit more on balls in play than his ability to draw walks. Winker's just truly good at drawing walks, getting to first base, and setting the table. 12.2% walks for 4.7. So to me, the lefty, Jesse Winker, ought to be in the leadoff spot, but it's neither here nor there. They're both very playable off the top. I prefer Winker slightly for a cheaper price on DraftKings, 100 more on FanDuel in the outfield. JD Martinez, 15.4% barrel rate, 45.4% hard hits. He's hit 16 home runs. He's got a 179 ISO, a little bit limited for output on that kind of contact over 464 plate appearances. He's been good, but this is no longer the JD Martinez in his prime that we once knew, the 30-40 home run hitter. But still an effective bat, still somebody you can play in lineups. He's created runs 14% better than average this year. No issues with playing Martinez, and you pick off a lot of any given slate home run upside. Pete Alonso, 12.7% barrels, a 45.2% hard hit rate. Nimmo, 8.7 and 46.5. And then Mark Vientos, 14.6 and 45.8% barrel and hard hit. It's a very good stretch of power from 3 through 6 for the Mets right here. That's very realistic. 4-man, everybody's below 5,000 Pete Alonso the closest to it. Vientos continues to be ludicrously cheap at 47. He's got 24 home runs now at 254 ISO. Leads the team at a 140 WRC plus. 3,200 for him on FanDuel, perfectly appropriate. First and third base eligible. You just plunk him in at third. Grab Pete Alonso at first for 33. Nimmo for 3,000, 4,600 is perfectly fine. It's not a great Nimmo season. He is still getting on base. He's got 19 home runs, 13 steals, and he has been a positive run creator. But the ISO is way down. The average is down a little bit. The on base is down a little bit. Nimmo's better than he's been this season, but he's still hitting the ball hard, still been effective even with the dip. Tyrone Taylor, mix and match quality guy, 7 home runs, 9 steals, can get involved from time to time, but inconsistent at the bottom of the lineup. Frankie Alvarez, 8 home runs on the season, just slashing 234, 301, 378, kind of problematic numbers so far. And then Eddie Alvarez, veteran, just fill-in guy, 2,300, 2,000, just replacement level, if that. This goes Manaea, Mets bats, Nationals bats, Jake Irvin. You could easily flip the Nationals bats and Jake Irvin. It's probably the other way around. It's probably Manaea, Mets, Irvin, Nationals bats. But either way, strongly favors the Mets. The Brobarian is here. What's up, Brobarian? Hello, everyone. Stephen Leibowitz says YRFI and Coors is a minus 175. Jake likes the Brewers. Mom is calling for the Schwarbomb. Schwarber rates out really, really well in the model. We'll skip ahead again. I almost made him the home run pick of the day. It's felt a little bit, I don't know, a little bit obvious, so I didn't go that direction. But yeah, love it. 15.57 in the home run model against Savali, who's had a bit of a power issue this year. Definitely seems doable. But first, let's talk this one. Max Fried, very talented pitcher, just a 2.8 degree average launch angle allowed, limits home runs down at 2.04. You can see the impact that it has. Even Shohei Ohtani under the magic number, 9.63. Not many opposing pitchers are going to do that to Ohtani. So you can see the quality that Max Fried brings, and it's an attribute. 4.8 degrees, 2.25% home runs last year, 7.6 degrees, 1.64 the year before. Very, very good at limiting barrels, very, very good at limiting hard hits and exit velo, inducing weak and medium contact. He's also a decent strikeout pitcher. 22.6 this year is down from 25.7 last year, similar to the 23.2 that he put up a couple years ago. 10.2% swinging is down compared to both of those years, but he's a decent strike thrower, 27.7% CSW. He'll walk a few here and there, but not exactly a pitcher who gets into trouble. A lot of double plays out of Max Fried, so more than capable of beating this Dodgers team. 8,400 I like a lot better than 9,400 on FanDuel. Projects out just okay and probably comes in with a more limited ceiling than some of the other pitchers priced at those tiers, but a very, very good pitcher just up against a terrible opponent. A 19.6% strikeout rate for this confirmed version of the Dodgers lineup is not an ideal target, and they've obviously got superstar caliber, at least in top 5 spots in their lineup. Yamamoto, again, I don't think you play him because he's 95, 9,000 across sites. That's a 5-inning projection, and it looks like a good projection. If it was, that's a 5-inning projection, and he might go 7, we'd obviously be firing away. I just don't think there's any chance he pitches more than 5 innings. First start back, went 4, faced 15 hitters, struck out 8, 1 run on, 3 hits. I think you could get a very similar start to that. He'll face, 3 more hitters. He'll probably face 18 hitters tonight. And he might strike out 8 to 10 of them. But without upside beyond that, it becomes limited. With even to be challenged, the Dodgers not necessarily going to be ahead of the game, ahead of the Braves against Max Fried after 5 innings. So you might be a little bit more taxed to even get the win upside, which would be part of the argument on the DraftKings slate. But 95, it's just a bad price fit for a guy that we know there's going to be an innings limitation. Didn't pitch from June 15th to September 10th when he came back last week. So I just think he's a very talented pitcher. Realistic idea that he would limit the Braves, find some strikeouts along the way, keep them off the board. Big impact on the Braves' home run numbers. He's got a 1.90 home run rate this season on 7.3% barrels. A lot of hard hits. We're way over the line there, but it's on an 8.1 degree average launch, so he's very good at keeping the ball down as well, and that's having an impact on even the Braves' home run upside. Nobody in the Braves' semi-powerful lineup above even 7.9 in the home run model. It's an impact. And the Dodgers have a good pen, so it's not like you're going to get some schlub coming in for them to load up on afterward. If you're going to the Dodgers, that's probably the preferred team between these two. As a collection of individuals, everybody still projects out pretty decently. So you can see that there is upside, but it's kind of capped based on just the type of pitcher that Fried is more often than not. Ohtani for 69.47 and 9.63 to lead the team in the home run model. He's got well over the century mark in runs and RBIs, 47 homers, 48 stolen bases. He's absolutely fantastic. A 323 ISO, a 168 WRC plus. Just give him like the next 5 MVPs right now. Mookie Betts 63.42, 17 homers, 14 steals, 299, 389, 504 with a 200 plus ISO. Monster hitter in the 2 spot. Extreme low strikeout, draws plenty of walks. Going to be a nightmare matchup for Max Fried. Teoscar Hernandez, Freddie Freeman, Will Smith, a great trio of hitters. Everybody's affordable for their talents. 49, 5,048 on DraftKings, 34, 34, and 32 on FanDuel. You get 29, 21, and 18 home runs out of those 3 hitters, a 225, a 196, and a 185 ISO, and everybody's well above average for run creation this year. That is a dynamite spot to build a stack with. You can 3-man those 3 hitters. It's painful to go to the Dodgers, especially against Max Fried, and say, all right, I'm leaving out Mookie Betts and Shohei Ohtani and taking a 3-man, and it's just going to be these 3 guys. But that's a very good 3-man that costs you $4,900 a piece. I can see the upside. That said, again, that's probably more a play for tomorrow, just not a day to roster Dodgers against Max Fried most of the time. But Smith is very good. Everyday catcher, 248, 326, 432 with 18 home runs. Very talented players. And Smith fills a priority role on DraftKings. Tommy Edman's been good for this team. 96 plate appearances of quality so far. He's hit 5 home runs and stolen 5 bases already. It's just who Tommy Edman is. He's got decent power, 15, 18 kind of home run range. Good speed. When he's effectively getting on base in the lower mid 3s, he's good. When he slips below like a 300 on base, he's not good. He loses a lot of quality. Right now, fire away with Edman shares. 4,000 with no multi-position on DraftKings. That kind of sucks. Feels more just another outfielder on DK. At 31 with the multi-position shortstop and second base on FanDuel, that's a very appealing piece in a Dodgers stack. But the Dodgers, again, not a great stack today. Miguel Rojas, mix and match quality, 34-26 across the infield. Max Muncy, lefty. He's going to suffer a little bit, 5-2-1 in the home run model because of Fried. So particularly against a lefty like Max Fried, there's extra levels of diminishment in that lefty with Muncy. Still love Muncy. He gets on at a 336 clip. He's got a 130 WRC plus. He's got a 13.8% walk rate, but probably a little bit diminished for this matchup. 35-45 across sites. Enrique Hernandez, 9 home runs on the season, 73 WRC plus in the worst year of his career. Getting toward the back end with Enrique at this point. On the Braves side, Michael Harris, 41, 3,000, has 11 home runs, 8 steals, but a really disappointing year over 409 plate appearances. Never really came together for Harris this season. He's a player we've seen succeed over the last 2 years. Stat stuffer with home run and speed ability, but it's been limited. I do like him in the role in the leadoff spot for those cheap prices, but not particularly against 5 innings of Yamamoto. I feel like Yamamoto is going to take the top right off this Braves lineup today, so really not considering them all that much. Jorge Soler's a part of it if you do go there. 4,032 is a good price to find him. He's still getting on at a 335 clip off of a 12% walk rate. Not bad, but not what he's paid to do. He's only hit 18 home runs. He's got a 189 ISO, 116 WRC plus. Any, average, like if I had a second baseman who all of a sudden went out and hit 18 home runs with a 189 ISO, was getting on at this level, drawing this kind of a walk rate with, this kind of contact, you'd be like, wow, all right, big step forward for, Johnny second baseman. But not from a guy that we know has light tower power like Jorge Soler. He's just he's doing what he can to stay relevant right now. But the power's been way out, and that's what we want from Soler. So just kind of a correlated scorer with a little bit of any given slate upside for a dinger. Marcell Ozuna, 53-37, has 37 home runs. He's the leader on the home run model, 7.9 for a long ball from Ozuna, 250 ISO, 156 WRC plus. But again, Yamamoto's equally good at limiting home run upside. Olsen, 51-34, 25 homers, 205 ISO. Rounding into form a little bit in terms of the power output, but it's still going to end up being a down season for Olsen. But he's up to a 109 WRC plus. We're at least over 200 for in the ISO department. He still makes very good contact. As I've said a number of times, this is still very, very elite, very, very good contact, bordering on elite contact. It's just we expect truly elite contact like we got last year from Matt Olson. Ramon Laureano, 36-26, puts good bat on ball for the price. Just another outfielder overall, but has hit 8 home runs, stolen 7 bases. He's at league average for run creation over 250 plate appearances. If you're going to the Braves in a bad spot, you could roster Ramon Laureano and not look foolish. Murph, 9.1% barrels, resulting in 9 home runs, a 156 ISO this year. Very limited output from Murphy, over 238 plate appearances. Darno's been the better of the two, but he's also gotten more consistent playing time. Murph's been in and out of the lineup. He's been banged up all season. Very good catcher power hitter when he's going right. Orlando Arcia, mix and match at best, 16 homers, but that's been the best thing he's done, and it's been a minute. Sub 300 on base is terrible, 75 WRC plus. Really disappointing season out of him. Gio Urshela, Whit Merrifield, just mix and match quality at the absolute best at the bottom. 2 non-hitters, really 3 non-hitters at the bottom of the lineup for Yamamoto to feast on over his 5 innings. This goes Max Fried. Dodgers bats, and then Braves bats and Yamamoto. But again, I really think Yamamoto's price doesn't really fit what the expectations for innings are today. In 5 innings, he could come out and give you exactly that, and that's it. Thank you, good night. I don't think you're getting any kind of ceiling on that. Trey wants Baker Mayfield over Dak Prescott in real life football as a Cowboys fan. I'll be damned. Yeah, Kupp screwed me in a lot of lineups too. He was one of my highest owned receivers, Trey. He was just, easy chalk with that target volume that he was expected to get in that offense. 21 targets in week 1, but obviously coming out of the game and getting injured is not going to pay that off. A lot of good lineups that got killed by that Kupp injury. So we talked very, very briefly about the Phillies' power potential against Aaron Savali. Savali's had an okay run since joining the Brewers. He's been better overall for the season than his reputation might suggest, or even than the numbers might overall suggest. But he's been much more gettable this season. He's reverted back to just kind of the average version of Aaron Savali, who's nothing special. 4.57 ERA with a 4.32 xFIP. The xFIP's the real number, but that's awfully close and still not good. 21.7% strikeout rate, just okay, average-ish. A limited 9.2% swinging, 28% CSW. Again, nothing special about any of these numbers. 8% barrels, just under the line for hard hits. He's improved there. I think we were over the line there and over the line here. So a couple of, no, he's given up 2 home runs in his last 2 games. Maybe they weren't all that hard hit. I don't know. But he's slightly below the threshold for both of these, but still a very realistic 4.15% home run rate against a team with at least 2 good home run hitters, despite Bryce Harper's slump for home run output that was extended for a while there. Still an elite home run hitter, 13.66 in the model. Schwarb's leading the day at 15.57, or at least leading the team. Is he leading the day? No, Rooker's leading the day, which I don't love that one. It is Brent Rooker, but that's another challenging spot. I kind of like the Schwarb's one better. So 15.57, he's hit 35 out of the park this year, 240 ISO, 138 WRC plus. Schwarber's tremendous to throw at Aaron Savali. Monster premium contact, draws a ton of walks, a 3 true outcomes hitter for sure, basically the definition of that. 370 on base percentage to set the table for Trey Turner, Bryce Harper, and what follows. Dynamite Phillies lineup. They are very, very good. At 6,600, you can throw some Savali shares, though, at the Phillies. That's very, very cheap and fits in as a bargain bin kind of an option. And he does have upside. He's got upside beyond these median projections. He's got the talent to pitch through this lineup and give you 7 innings. It hasn't come through a ton, but not really an overly comparable opponent, but 3 starts back against the Giants, went 7, struck out 7, walked 2, no runs, 2 hits. Last time out, he faced that same Giants team at San Francisco. Just 2 strikeouts and a walk, 2 earned runs on 3 hits, 1 home run allowed, 5 1/3. Not a great start, but a moderately effective one on DraftKings for your 66. He did pitch into the 6th inning. He did get the win. You could get by with that start as a bargain bin. You'd obviously like more strikeouts. In between those two, he faced St. Louis, went 5, 3 earned runs allowed, did not get the win, but that's not his fault in that start. That's an okay start. And he struck out 7. Gave up a homer, 3 earned on 6 hits. But again, that's not terrible. Not his fault he didn't win. So you could get that kind of an outing even against the Phillies. It's just a high danger spot. For 82, you could kind of maybe roll the dice. If you're building 150 on FanDuel, I think you could get there. In one lineup, in 3 lineups, I don't think you're going Aaron Savali against the Phillies, though. It seems kind of obvious. Suarez on his side of the mound, 23.6% strikeout rate for the opposing projected version of the Brewers lineup. Suarez is nearly at that exact same number, so that seems like a good matchup. 23.7% strikeouts for him this season. 3.05 ERA with a 3.17 xFIP. He's been very, very effective. He's excellent at limiting power, inducing weak and medium contact. Just a 6.4 degree average launch, 4.8% barrels this year, 86.9 miles an hour of exit velo, 34.5% home runs. A very real 1.94% home run rate against. Last year, those numbers were similar. 2.41, higher launch. Better barrel rate, but still excellent at limiting home runs. Same thing the year before. He's slightly better for strikeouts this season, despite being right around the same swinging strikes and CSW. He's a good, not great strikeout pitcher, slightly above the league average, but what he does very, very well when things are going right is keep the ball in the yard. He had a bumpy start 3 starts back. He faced Atlanta. We'll do it this way. Pitched very well through the season up until July 22nd, went on the injured list for about a month. Came back on the 24th of August and faced the Kansas City Royals. Went 5 innings in his return, which is great. Gave up 1 earned run on 4 hits, struck out 6 against the low strikeout Royals team. Walk 1, booked the win. It's a great start. 4 innings in against the Braves in the next one because he gave up 4 earned runs on 5 hits. He allowed a very uncharacteristic 2 home runs in that game. Struck out 6, walked 1 over the 4 innings, took the loss. Obviously not a good DFS start. Faced Miami, went 5. Gave up no runs, 3 hits, struck out 4, walked 2. Not a bad outing. He got the win. You'd like to see the 6th inning against a team like Miami, though. Last time out, he faced the Rays, another very gettable squad. He gave up 4 earned on a whopping 12 hits. None of them got out of the yard. It seems like he got dinked and dunked to death a little bit. 2 strikeouts, 2 walks. Did pitch into the 6th inning in that one, 5 1/3. Not a terrible start, not an ideal start, no quality start, no win. But upside for 6 against the Brewers. Upside for a few Ks. I could see this 6 strikeout form returning. 6 innings, 6 strikeouts, 2 runs. The win, the quality start. I think that's on board for Ranger. 9,092, there are plenty of options that are less expensive than that on this pitching slate. He fits in just here. So bear in mind, you've got a much better looking Reed Detmers for price. You've got a lot of options up this way. But Ranger's easily on the board. I think he's a very talented pitcher, and I love the way that he just limits offense. In terms of the bats, I talked about the top 3 a little bit in the Phillies lineup, but again, Schwartz and Harper are very obvious, as is Trey Turner. He's always worth paying for. 58-37. You just complete the trio up top and figure out how to get there. 18 home runs, 15 steals on the season for Turner, 294, 340, 465. Creating runs 24% better than average. Nicky Castellanos, 4,100, 3,100, still very cheap, has gotten himself to 20 home runs this year. A 165 ISO is a little bit limiting, but it's not completely terrible. Capable of finding extra base hits, capable of finding a little bit of power upside. Very cheap for his bat-on-ball skills. I don't mind Castellanos, but you can see the limitations of a 97 WRC+. He's just hitting cleanup behind these 3 excellent on-base hitters, so there's plenty of opportunities for him to create DFS scoring events. Dynamite spot in the lineup. Alec Bohm to follow, 4,300, 3,200. He's got 13 homers, slashing 290, 342, 460, a 122 WRC+. He's excellent. He's not the biggest home run threat in the world, but tons and tons of bat on ball and very high quality contact. So for the price, I love Alec Bohm as a 4th man in. You could skip Castellanos and just go directly to Bohm and then maybe grab Real Muto for cheap on a DraftKings stack as a 5-man if you wanted. No issues by the way, if you just want to include Castellanos and Bohm. That's a perfectly reasonable 5-man off the top there. It's 5,180 a piece. If you go like this and like that and like that, it's the same price, 5,200 a piece. Yes, I do realize I nearly hit the lyrics to like this and like this and like that, y'all. I don't know what song that is. That lyric is in my head, but I can't place it. Somebody tell me what song that's from. It's a 90s rap song, I want to say. Anyway. Real Muto, 42-29, 12 home runs on the season, a 107 WRC+. Plus. Just looking like JT Realmuto, a little bit more limited for speed, but a catcher who can definitely drive the ball effectively. So no issues with going to Realmuto. Brandon Marsh, I like a lot. 9.3% barrels, 47.2% hard hits, 15 homers, 16 steals, gets on at a 332 clip, creating runs 11% better than average, mostly buried at the bottom of the lineup. He's very high strikeout, but he draws a decent walk rate, and he crushes the ball when he makes contact. So at those prices, I always like to try and get some Brandon Marsh into some Philly stacks if I'm building a bunch of them. Cal Stevenson in the bottom spot, dead min on DraftKings, 2,200 on FanDuel. We're going to have to give him a look. Not a player I know all that much about top of my head. Stevenson is 28 years old, so he's a non-prospect. He's made 103 plate appearances in the show, slashing 184, 287, 253 over that sample in the last 3 seasons. 0 home runs and a stolen base. He has a 61 WRC plus for his career. Doesn't seem like much of an option at the bottom of the lineup, just in the in here as a filler right now. He's also 5'9", 175 pounds. That is the wrong Excel file. On the Brewers side, Jackson Chourio, 21 home runs now, 20 stolen bases, just a dynamite rookie season. 8.5% barrels, 45.2% hard hits. This is just going up and up and up and up and up. Like 2 weeks ago, this was, or 3 weeks ago, this was around 6. This was in the lower 40s. It's just been a straight line for Chourio this season. 203 ISO, a 122 WRC plus. Really effective in that leadoff spot for them now. Garrett Mitchell, a reasonable option at 33-26, 6 home runs and 7 steals for him on this season if he's hitting second. Lefty-lefty is a little bit diminishing, and again, the ability for Ranger to just induce weak and medium contact is not great. But Mitchell's been getting on. He's drawing a decent walk rate. Ranger's not terrible for walks, but maybe he makes something happen. He also is a strikeout victim a lot of the time. William Contreras and Gary Sanchez back-to-back in this lineup. You could probably expect both of them. They're both right-handed. Gary gets in there against lefties a lot of the time. Diminished for power output for sure, but if anybody's going to hit one out against Suarez, if he makes a mistake, it could easily be one of the two catchers. They both hit the ball extremely hard. They're both good home run hitters. 22 in a full season for Contreras, 10 in just 252 plate appearances for Gary, still barreling the ball 10.9%, 44.9% hard hits. Willie Adames at 48-35 has 32 home runs and 18 stolen bases while slashing 252, 333, 474, a 222 ISO, a 123 WRC plus in the best season of his career. They got to hope they get him back at that level next year so that they can make maybe make a true run with a second-year Chourio, the return of Christian Yelich. This is going to be a good team next year. They've also got a couple more prospects coming. Blake Perkins, mix and match quality. Rhys Hoskins, a lot of power there. 24 homers, but inconsistent. 207, 295, 407 this year. 5 points below average for run creation, but he is a 200 ISO guy. 12.5% barrels, 41.9% hard hits. You can always include Rhys Hoskins. He's entirely skippable as well once you get down to like the 7 spot in the lineup. He'd be more appealing hitting up in this territory, which is probably what they ought to do. He's high strikeout, but who cares if you're comparing it to Gary Sanchez? It's 6 of one, half dozen on another. So I kind of prefer Hoskins in that head-to-head, but I still love Gary. Bryce Turang has a lot of stolen base upside, 43 on the season. He's getting on at a 322 clip, which is not bad. Just a 92 WRC plus. Needs to improve something. I'm not entirely sure at this point why he can't get that above average. Probably suffers a little bit for being down here, but the on-base has been improving. Needs to get a little bit more consistent with the bat, it looks like. Maybe hit for a little bit more, drive the ball a little bit more. Playable piece at second base, but not ideal. 46, 3,000. Chasing stolen base scoring in DFS is a little bit of a fool's errand, in my opinion. 31, unless it's like a lock and load stolen base guy that you know he's going to steal if he's getting on base. But Turang is kind of that, but it's a stretch. 31-26 for Joey Ortiz. He's a decent player. 108 WRC plus at the bottom of the lineup. 10 home runs and 9 steals. Just adequate output. Keeps you in a job, but not really. Doesn't make you a star by any means. But he's low strikeout. He can draw a walk. He gets involved with the offense quite a bit. And given the good on base, you can use him as a wraparound back to the top. This is Phillies bats, Ranger, Brewers bats, Savali. I do think everything is playable, though. Solid 4 corners opportunity. Savali is easily the least appealing piece, though. Tigers, Royals. Let's see if we got the Tigers lineup in. Does not look like. So Reese Olson was having a really good year. 3.23 ERA, 3.71 xFIP, 21.6% strikeouts over 19 starts, 103 innings. Was good at limiting home runs despite giving up a little bit of hard hit and exit velo because he's yet another guy that's very low launch angle. 5.4% barrel rate on the season. Where is he? There he is. He has not pitched since July 20th. He made 2 rehab starts, 2 innings, 3 innings. I've got him limited. I believe that was a 5-inning projection. I think we could get 5. He was effectively pitching deep into games throughout the season earlier in the year. A bunch of 5 and change, 6 and change, and 8-inning start looks like the peak. But was pretty effective throughout the year. Hit a couple of bumps. Hit a bad 6-run start in his second start of the year back in April. Had an 8-run start followed by a 5-run start to begin June. Or excuse me, that went to begin June. It went 5 runs, 8 runs, 5 runs, and 3 straight starts. But then he cleaned that up the rest of the way through June, and when he pitched of July, he was very good. So I think there's upside there, but again, you're probably not dealing with a lot of ceiling for your money. He's just cheap. It's not like the Yamamoto play for 5 innings. So I think you can buy 5 innings of Reese Olson, even against this Kansas City Royals team at 7,000. It's probably not the ideal opportunity for that. If he was facing, say, the Mariners, the White Sox, that would be kind of a smash spot even in 5 innings. I think it's playable, but not great. 88 on FanDuel, I'd probably leave it alone just with the limitations and the low strikeout, high-quality opponent. Lugo, you got to give it to him. I mean, legit contender for the Cy Young Award, 2.94 ERA, a 3.81 xFIP. I'm not a believer in any of this being completely real. I think he's a good pitcher, not a great pitcher. He's had good numbers over the seasons, but some of the, like this year was entirely in relief work. This year was as a starter. But these are good, not great numbers. These are good, not great numbers outside of the earned runs. The xFIP tells the true story. 3.76 last year, 3.51 the year before, 3.81 this year. That's who he is. He's nearly a full run worse than what he's been throughout basically this entire season. 30 starts, 193 innings. With all that in mind, I don't think you can take anything away from Seth Lugo right now. He's facing a Tigers lineup that has a 25.4% strikeout rate for this projected version. Even with their improvements and with their little surge through the second half that they've had, Lugo's got more than enough in the tank to get through this lineup. He faced them back on August 1st. He went 8 innings, struck out just 3, walked 1. That's your limitations with Lugo a lot of the time. But 8 innings, you can buy a lot of quality scoring for just from the 8 clean innings alone. 3 straight 7-inning starts in his last 3. Again, I read this at the beginning, but that was 3 starts back August 30th against the Astros. He went 7, 1 earned run on 6 hits. He struck out 9 Astros. Faced the Guardians on the 4th, went 7 innings, 1 earned run on 6 hits, 4 strikeouts against the low strikeout Guardians team. Faced the Yankees, 7 shutout innings, 3 hits allowed, 10 strikeouts. Lugo's really good. Or Lugo's been really good this year, and he's just kind of good. Definitely think you can fire away, though, especially 87 on DraftKings. For 10-2 on FanDuel, just given the way that the slate stacks up, it's not my favorite option. Across 150, I would absolutely have some, and my hope would be that he kind of goes a little bit lower on than he should be. But that's probably not the case because I think people are still thinking Tigers suck, automatic start for any good pitcher against, and I think people probably overrate Seth Lugo a little bit. So he probably does end up getting a little popular. But he's medium, average-ish kind of a strikeout rate, very good low walk rate, medium swinging strikes, nothing special about the strike throwing ability. Medium launch angle, okay in terms of the contact, but not exactly great. I definitely think he's gotten lucky here in the home runs allowed, 1.93% home runs on, again, a not overly fly ball, but definitely not as low as some of those other pitchers in terms of the launch angle, a reasonable amount of barrels, approaching 40% hard hits, approaching 89 miles an hour of exit velo on average. He should have worse numbers than he does, but he doesn't. I do think you could take some Tigers, especially if Lugo gets a little bit popular on the other side, and especially on DraftKings. They make a reasonable enough hedge. I've talked a lot about, well, these three really. Those three lefties, and then the young lefties that joined this lineup down there. So those guys aren't at all bad. There's a lot of young talent in this lineup. You can see these two are crushing the ball. Kerry Carpenter and Riley Green, probably their two best hitters right now. Carpenter, I've been raving about since he rejoined the team, and he's delivered a 297 ISO over 265 plate appearances. He's hit 15 home runs while slashing 284, 344, 581 with a 156 WRC+. Big part of their second half. Monster contact. Strikes out at a pretty aggressive clip. Doesn't really draw walks. Riley Green strikes out the same, but draws more walks. Makes him a little bit more value for real baseball. But you can see the difference. They're both creating runs well above average, but 156 versus 139 in double the plate appearances. Green has 23 home runs, 265, 354, 494. Very good options in the outfield for those two hitters. Parker Meadows is playable off the top. He's also left-handed, but I skipped him because, he's been mediocre over 247 plate appearances. Has hit 8 home runs, does have 9 stolen bases, does have a 207 ISO, and has created runs 10% better than average. But some of that power is probably a bit of an illusion given what the contact looks like. Supposed to be a good, medium home runs, a little bit of speed, make things happen, a Tommy Pham type of a player from the left side of the plate. But he's just kind of mix and match. Colt Keith, I actually like better than Meadows in the top spot, despite him underperforming Meadows' output by quite a bit. He's hit 12 home runs. He's stolen 7 bases. Those numbers are similar, but he's only got a 117 ISO. That's really surprising for a guy who's known for being a good power bat from the left side of the plate. I just love that he fills second base for so cheap and gives you good opportunities against Lugo. So like that paired with these two, I would take some Parker Meadows and draw it out to, a 4-man +1 from down here. I don't think is bad at all. Wensil Perez, switch hitter, 3,200, 2,800, has hit 9 home runs. He's stolen 9 bases, just a 91 WRC+. Mix and match guy that probably doesn't belong in that 5 spot ultimately. Torkelson could move up to that spot, 3,800, 2,900. He's hit 8 home runs and 336 chances in a really disappointing season that saw him kind of slide backward and regress after taking at least a big step forward for power in the show last year. Was better when they sent him back to AAA for some additional seasoning, has been okay since coming back. But the numbers overall, he's kind of targetable for strikeouts, not really a high walk player, but definitely does have power in that bat on the right day. Jace Young is very cheap at 28-24. He's only slashing 221, 346, 265 in a disappointing string of output over 81 plate appearances since getting called up, but he is a fairly high-end prospect for this team. I definitely think you can include him in stacks if you build them. Trey Sweeney's been in 4 home runs, 2 stolen bases, slightly better. 194 ISO, but a lot of inconsistency there. He's hit the ball very hard, 13.2% barrels and 47.2% hard hits in the limited plate appearances, the limited batted ball events. But he's cheap, not the greatest fit at shortstop, but if you're stacking them up and you need a cheap shortstop and you're spending money elsewhere, then I think he's in play. These top guys are easily your priority bats. Any 2 of those 4 makes sense. Jake Rogers, pretty skippable. 10 home runs, a 165 ISO, sub Mendoza, sub 250 on base. He does hit the ball hard when he connects, but he connects very infrequently. The Royals, definitely good enough to throw at Reese Olson. Tommy Pham in the leadoff spot is giving him a 319 on base. He's an effective leadoff man. Category filler, but more of a correlated scoring option these days. He's just cheap, just another outfielder. Bobby Witt, 7.09 in the home run model. He's got 31 on the season, 28 stolen bases, a 264 ISO, 166 WRC+. Absolutely tremendous way to fill shortstop on any given slate. Definitely some potential against Reese Olson. Salvi Perez, 4,500, 3,200, has 27 home runs this year, a 198 ISO. Excellent catcher option. 13% barrels, 44.4% hard hits. No issues with going to Sal on any slate, and I think he's affordably priced across sites, particularly where you need catchers. That's a great price for a hitter like this. 44 for Michael Massey at second base, 29 on FanDuel, a lefty with a good stick, a little bit of power on the bat, 13 home runs, 195 ISO. Massey's too cheap. He doesn't really strike out, doesn't really draw walks, so he's always putting the ball in play. Solid lefty bat against a, again, medium-grade righty. You're just a little bit limited by that launch angle, but if Olsen makes a couple mistakes along the way, he's definitely giving up the hard hits in the exit velo to support some power upside. Renfro's having a bad year, 13 home runs, just a 96 WRC plus, a 161 ISO. Melendez, I think, is actually, despite the 207, the 271, I think is actually having an okay year. I've talked about it a few times. He's made strides in improving his strikeout rate. He's making similar contact to last year. The barrels are down a little bit. If the barrels had been there, we'd be dealing with a totally different kind of animal. He'd probably have, approaching 25 home runs. But I like what I'm seeing from a kid who's still developing as a hitter. It's just he's right now just kind of an any given slate gamble, but there's true power there. 17 home runs, a 197 ISO from the left side this year. Adam Frazier, 25-24 mix and match quality. Julie Gurriel, 2,200, 2,300. It's just 22 plate appearances, but he's been productive since they brought him in. 294, 364, 412, a 109 WRC plus. Striking out but drawing walks. Once upon a time, one of the best hitters in baseball for a couple seasons there. It's not his fault he couldn't get from Cuba to the U.S. till he was like 32. We got the best years that we're going to ever get from Yuli already. But at these prices, at the bottom of the lineup as a contributor, no issues with playing him for DFS against Reese Olson. Kyle Isbell, mix and match at the bottom of the lineup. 8 homers, 11 steals this year, but an 82 WRC+. This goes Lugo, Royals, Tigers, Olson. Oof. Cup going to the IR too, probably. King of all trades, Black Sheep. The choice is yours. What are you talking? Black Sheep versus Tommy Boy? I don't know what we're talking. What Black Sheep is referring to. Thanks, Power. Power had put the Milwaukee confirmed lineup in there before I saw it. Did I talk about the confirmed lineup or did I talk about a fake one? The confirmed Brewers lineup is Churio, Perkins 2, Contreras 3, Willy Adames moves to 4, which is smart. Gary Hoskins 5-6. So they separated the two catchers with Willy Adames in between. And then Hoskins moves up from the 7 spot. We had him into the 6, which is good. Solid runner righty power with Contreras, Adames, Gary Sanchez, Rhys Hoskins. Makes for a good 4-man right there. Sal Frelick in at 7. Just a contact and speed player. Ortiz to the 8 spot. Diminishes his ability as a wraparound just slightly. And then Turang 9 makes for an interesting enough wraparound. Needs to get on base more to pay that off correctly. Appreciate you pointing that out, bud. Cubbies is in. We've got the A's. We've got the Cubs. We've got Shota Imanaga, which is why I question the mark for Brent Rooker in terms of the home run upside. But I guess not. It's not really necessary now that I'm looking at it again. Yeah, Imanaga's given up plenty of contact. I was misremembering that. So no real impact to the Rooker home run number at all. That's actually perfectly fine to have Rooker leading the slate at 17.2, considering Imanaga's 8.8% barrels and 4% hard hit, home runs. The hard hits, the exit velo are not bad, but he is a fly ball pitcher, an 18.7 degree average launch. So Rooker would have been fine as a home run pick as well. Don't mind having him leading the slate at 17.22. He's had a tremendous year. We're back over 300 for the batting average. 371 on base. I care about a lot more. And obviously with this player, we're really just looking at the power numbers. 37 homers, a 281 ISO, 169 WRC+. He's been absolutely tremendous this season. Jacob Wilson, I kind of like in the leadoff spot up there, 24-22 across sides. Very, very cheap. Hasn't done a lot in his 60 plate appearances in the show so far, but the kid throughout his minor league career was good on base option, decent average. So mix and match quality ahead of the power in that lineup. I think you can consider that if you're stacking up some A's. Overall, Imanaga's just good, though. I don't love targeting this pitcher. 14.5% swinging strike rate, extraordinarily low walk rate, 3.9%, solid approaching 1 in 4 strikeout rate, 24.8%, a 3.03 ERA with a sub 4 xFIP. He's a very talented lefty. Between the two, I would probably be more inclined to just grab some Imanaga shares, chase a little bit of strikeout upside. The A's are right at the same level. They're basically 1 in 4, 25% strikeout rate exactly for this confirmed version of the A's lineup. So those two things collide. I tend to favor the pitcher finding a few additional Ks along the way. But if he gives up that dinger, if he gives up the long ball to Brent Rooker, to Shea Langoliers, who's also above the magic number, or any of these other guys, it's going to be a problematic outing. Joey Estes, to me, is just a target for some Cubs bats. Low 18.1% strikeout rate, a 4.36 ERA that is high on its own and also betrayed by a 5.15 xFIP. He's been low strikeout, but he gives up a decent amount of contact. He's an extreme fly ball pitcher. 26-degree average launch, 25.9. That's one of the highest marks in the league that I've seen this year. 9% barrel for a regular starter anyway. 9% barrels, starting in just below the threshold there. A little bit better there. 3.70% home run rate seems very realistic. Cubs pushing 3 guys above the magic number. Ian Happ, Seiya Suzuki, who I made today's home run pick of the day. And then Isaac Paredes, who's at 10, but has had a little bit of a problem with output since joining the Cubs. 63, I don't think you play it on DraftKings. 78, I don't think you play it on FanDuel. Seems like a stretch to expect any kind of real success. Even if the Cubs don't have a great day, there's enough sequencing, there's enough quality on base guys in this lineup, and they're decent enough at not striking out that I don't really see any upside push toward Joey Estes even at price. Talked about Wilson and Rooker. Getting into the A's lineup with J.J. Bleday at 37.29. He's very cheap for a guy with 20 home runs, a 208 ISO, and a 125 WRC plus this season. The lefty-lefty of it with Bleday. .231, 279, 490, but a 260 ISO? 6 of his 20 home runs in 112 plate appearances have come lefty-lefty this year. 487 plate appearances against righties. He's hit 14 of his home runs, but he only has a 196 ISO. Still a good ISO, but 196 versus 260 lefty-lefty. He's got a 117 WRC plus same-handed, 127 opposing. I gotta see, is that true for his whole career? Is he always hit for power against same-handed pitching? It's not that many more plate appearances. It only stretches out to 227 plate appearances. He's only got 2 more home runs and everything else is diminished around it, though. It drops to a 179 ISO. So he's been exceptional for power against fellow lefties in a limited sample this year, but it's probably a little deceptive. Overall, I think he's just a mix and match kind of a guy. Shea Langeliers is 43-26, has 26 homers, a 219 ISO, a lot of inconsistency, a lot of high strikeouts, but a very good barrel rate, very good hard hit rate. 219, 280, 438. You'd love to see him get above 300 for the on base, but it's just not his skill set. You're just looking for the home run upside from a cheap catcher hitting cleanup in this lineup if you go there. Geloff at 32-26 at second base. Not a bad option positionally. 8.8 in the 8.88 in the home run model, 17 homers, 23 steals this year. Inconsistent at best. 89 WRC plus isn't good. The on base is sub 300. That's basically the tail of this team. They'd be a playoff team if anybody on this team was getting on base above 300 except for Brent Rooker. Or several guys anyway. But Geloff is playable. I continue to believe Geloff is an interesting second base option given the way he fills multiple categories for DFS scoring. I really don't care about the real life baseball of it. I mean, I do, but not in this format. Daz Cameron continues to hit the ball very hard. I talked about it the other day. I told you guys it's a secret. He's mashing when he makes contact. It's resulted in just 196, 260, 327, just a 131 ISO, 70 WRC plus. But he has hit 5 home runs in 169 plate appearances. When he's got on, he's been running. He's stolen 5 bases despite just the 260 on base. But this is what I'm most interested in. 8.3% barrels is okay. 50.5% hard hits is very good. So when he's put bat on ball at a cheap price in the outfield, it hasn't been bad at all. Tyler Soderstrom, 34-27. Interesting mix and match player down lineup, but don't love the lineup spot. I'm going to guess that he's not all that great with limited experience lefty-lefty against a pretty high-quality lefty. Tyler Nevin, 25-23. Mix and match quality, very cheap pricing, multi-position on both sides, but hasn't given us a lot this season. Same thing with Max Schumann. He's just kind of mediocre. 7 home runs, 14 steals, 86 and an 80 WRC plus for those two players. On the Cubs side, which is the more appealing stack between these two teams, I think we have their lineup as well. Hit the like button if you haven't done that already. Hit the subscribe. Coming up on 5:31. Trying to get out of here with a hard out at 6 o'clock because we've got a 6:30 football show for tonight's Monday Night Football action for Showdown slates. We're going to be taking a look at Ace Mind Sims on that. We're going to be taking a look at some lineup builds, talking stats for all the players from week 1 and just who they are and how they fit in price-wise. But definitely keep in mind, acemind.io, our guys, our partners for optimizers for Sims. Excellent results so far in the Showdown format, particularly, that we're going to be talking about and looking at on that show. But if you go over there, promo code rotoscouts, all in caps, get you 20% off your first month over at AceMind. Give them a look. I'm telling you, it's very, very good tools for a lot less money than a lot of other places are asking for similar output, similar results. So definitely very high quality over there. And come on back at 6:30. We're going to talk football, but got to get us through the end of the baseball slate before then. Ian Happ, top of the Cubs lineup, predictably 11.89 in the home run model, 45-35 across sites. He's hit 23 homers, 13 stolen bases. A very, very good Ian Happ season. Continuing to get on base aggressively, 345 on base, 125 WRC plus. Hits the ball very hard, 12% barrels, 45.4% hard hits. I'm an Ian Happ fan. I like him a lot. Dansby in the 2 spot, 4,200. Up to 14 home runs and 17 steals. We're course correcting a little bit late in the season. 235, 308, 376, 94 WRC plus. 2 good weeks. He might get to league average for run creation and not look completely terrible. What we've liked all along is that he's still barreling the ball 9% of the time, 42% hard hits. Still an effective hitter in there. I don't think he's completely lost. I like the little bounce back. Phil shortstop at not a bad price at all, 4,200. Suzuki, again, home run pick of the day, 11.06 in the model. Hits the ball exceptionally hard, 11.7% barrels, 48.5% hard hits. Strikes out at a decent rate, but also a 10% walk rate, 354 on base, a 203 ISO, 20 homers, 15 steals. Dynamite piece for DFS. Not a bad price at $5,300 for that output. Cody Bellinger's more expensive at 51 in the outfield between the two. Give me some Suzuki. Relatively similar numbers, but Suzuki's outperforming across the board. He's hitting the ball quite a bit harder. That's been the case all along with these two players. 20 home runs versus 18, 15 steals versus 9, 354 versus 330 in the on-base department. Monster difference in the ISO department. Pretty big difference in the run creation department. Bellinger's good, not great. Low strikeout, medium walk rate. Definitely can get involved. But as the highest priced player on the team on DraftKings, I don't love it. He's in my stacks if I'm building with this team, but he's not exactly the top priority guy considering that price and how it works with, these two guys as cheap as they are, Suzuki at a similar price, all these guys as cheap as they are. Bellinger gets skippable in that mix, especially if you're trying to keep this side of your stacks cheap. Isaac Paredes, 41-31, struggling mightily since joining the Cubs. Still gets on base and draws walks. Decent contributor in that department, 347 on base, a 118 WRC plus. The power's been out a little bit. We're at 19 home runs over 599 plate appearances. We're looking for a little bit more, but he's cheap at first and third base, 41 on third base only on DraftKings. Mix and match kind of a guy down lineup, but bat on ball is going to be available today. So a guy who can drive the ball in the right situation, I don't have issues with it. Michael Busch, probably a little bit better despite a little dip there in the home run model between the two. He's hit 20 on the season, one more than Paredes has. 197 ISO compared to the 164. More a true power bat. You can see that in the barrel rates and the hard hit. Higher strikeout, but similar walk rate. I don't mind Busch as an alternative to Paredes on either site. 2,800, you save a little bit at first base if you go that direction on FanDuel, and you get the lefty bat against a mediocre righty. Nico's just mix and match, a little bit of speed. Same thing with Pete Crow Armstrong, a little bit of speed. He's up to 10 home runs, 27 steals. Having a good rookie season despite what the numbers look like because he plays a hell of a lot of good defense, and he's got very good speed. I think he improves on these numbers going forward. I think he is going to be a good player overall, and I think he might get interesting for DFS. Any given slate upside right now. Miguel Amaya, mix and match catcher at the absolute best, and really not even that kind of quality. 7 home runs, a 78 WRC plus. This game goes Cubs bats. Imanaga. A's bats, and then really no Joey Estes. All the baseball lineups are coming in early. Everybody just wants to get baseball up and done with and get on to football. I get it. I mean, I don't get it. This is the much, much more interesting sport. This is the much better sport between the two. More strategic. More exciting, more tense. Football, there's a lot of guys just kind of standing around. I've talked about that at length. We got to work Nick York in here real quick. Nick is, I'm going to say right-handed. Nick is right-handed. Something about that. Lefty names always just sound left-handed. I don't know why. So it's Andre Pallante on the hill for the Cards. As mentioned, not a high-end pitcher in terms of DFS output. Much more capable of just putting up clean innings because he's an extreme. He's the most extreme version of this low launch angle thing. 1.2 degree average launch this season. Last year, it was negative 11.5 in his relief outings. Negative 3.3 and a 108 innings, 10 starts hybrid roll the year before. So demonstrably good at inducing ground balls. This year, he's also inducing some weak and some medium contact in a lot of cases. Years past, it was more along the lines of, a lot of hard hits and exit velo, but everything's on the ground. This year, it's a little bit of both. 1.82% home runs this year, 1.99 last year, 1.97 the year before. It is indisputable that Pallante is at least good at limiting home run power, which takes a lot of the Pirates' appeal away. Now you're dealing with a team that's going to have to sequence their way to success. This team has a collective, I'll leave out the 167. The 7 guys with reasonable stats have a collective 314 on base. It's not completely awful, but it's not standout. The leaders are their 2 stars, and then everybody else is pretty low. In terms of WRC plus, they've only got 2 players. Oh, that's not even their 2 stars. That's Reynolds and Bart. They've got 2 players above average for run creations. Bart is good, by the way. He's having a very good year, over 245 plate appearances. I just assumed that it was going to be like O'Neill Cruz or Andrew McCutchen when I saw the on base. But it's a really limited lineup if you take away any kind of semblance of power. I really don't think you're going to Pirates against Andre Pallante, but I don't think that necessarily leads us to Pallante shares. 72-74, even though he's cheap. 17.5% Ks, a 10-plus walk rate, 4.13 ERA, a 4.11 xFIP. I think you just get that kind of a game. 4 or 5 runs against, but the Pirates didn't explode. Or 3 to 5 runs against, whatever. A lot of base runners and opportunities, but it was limited because he induced some ground balls, turned some double plays, and you get out of it, and nobody was overly successful. Except for this guy. 9,800 11.5 for Paul Skeens, who's got a 32.3% strikeout rate in 20 starts, 120 innings. 2.10 ERA, a 2.69 xFIP, setting records wherever he turns. 13.1% swinging strike rate is elite. A .99 whip is fantastic. He's been very, very good at limiting premium contact and power because if you can't connect with it, then you can't hit it out of the ballpark. Skeens is absolutely dynamite. 98 11.5, at least one more time around the merry-go-round with Skeens for the season. We'll see if he gets limited in his last couple of starts. But I'm looking at 6 innings of high-quality work here from Skeens. Love him at the top of the board. Cards, 20.5% strikeout rate. Not an ideal target, but there's really not that many threatening hitters in this lineup anymore. The diminished versions of Goldie and Arenado. Goldie strikes out, Arenado doesn't, but neither one is all that good anymore. Burleson and Mason Wynn don't really strike out that much, but against Paul Skeens, that's a different story. They're both okay, but limited. Down lineup, Donovan, another non-threatening hitter with a very low strikeout rate. Nootbaar hovering around 20, and then 3 guys in the mid to high 20s. I don't think this is all that dangerous of a spot for Skeens. So fire away with shares of him from the top of the slate. He looks fantastic. There are a lot of options. Again, you're paying a premium for Paul Skeens because he's Paul Skeens. But you could easily go there for that. Not that much of a projection difference. Not that much of a ceiling difference. Get Reed Detmers against the White Sox. Save $3,000 on FanDuel. Save a nice chunk of change, 2,100 on the DK slate. Not bad. If you're going to Pirates against Pallante, again, I really don't love it. Even though, that's one that I think that's a little trappy. I think that's one the casual fan might say, oh, Pallante is 4+ ERA. He's nothing, no strikeouts. This is a pitcher we want to target. I don't think that's necessarily true. I think he's going to be good at keeping these guys in check. And it's really not the most appealing lineup in the world anyway. No O'Neill Cruz for one thing. No McCutchen, you at least lose some, a skilled on-base guy who's hitting the ball hard. I know he hasn't been Andrew McCutchen anymore, but he's like 41. IKF off the top at 39-27. I don't like him at shortstop. I would take him, I guess, at second base on FanDuel. 313 on base, a 96 WRC plus, 8 home runs, 9 steals. Just a bat on ball guy and not really all that skilled. No real power to speak of. The 8 home runs are fine, but that's about all you get out of him. Yeah, not nearly my favorite hitter in the league. He's just an I'll take him along for the ride because I don't know where else you're going. Brian Reynolds is the priority bat, 5,000, 3,200, 22 homers, 10 steals, 348 on base, a 122 WRC plus. Just a 175 ISO is a little disappointing, but he still made a lot of good contact, 9.6% barrels, 45.9% hard hits. Bart, again, over 245 chances, has 13 home runs, a 221 ISO, 130 WRC plus. Finally seems to have found his footing in the show. 10.9% barrels, $4,100 catcher on DraftKings where you got to play him. He's a priority bat in this lineup, but I don't love going to the Pirates. And again, if we're taking the home runs away, that just becomes a mediocre hitter who's getting on base a little bit with no correlated scoring help behind him. Connor Joe for 3,000, multi-position eligible, 2,500 multi-position on FanDuel, 9 home runs this year, a 143 ISO, 92 WRC plus, entirely skippable. Brian De La Cruz, Yasmani Grandal climbing the lineup. De La Cruz, 9.3% barrels, 41.6% hard hits, 19 homers. Most of the output came while with Miami. Hasn't done a ton since joining this team. Mix and match quality, just another outfielder type against, again, his attribute is hitting home runs, and if you take that away, it doesn't really give you a lot. Bad on-base percentage. Jasmine Grandal, I like him moving up in the spot. He's a very cheap catcher. He has actually made very good contact this year. Low strikeout. We just don't get anything really for the money. He's up to 7 home runs, I guess, a 156 ISO, but very, very limited. York is available for the dead min on DraftKings, not on the FanDuel slate. He was born in the year 2002. That's insane. He came over from Boston. He was in AA, AAA with Boston, collectively across AA, AAA with Boston, and then AAA with Pittsburgh. I'm going to call that around high fives, 550 or so plate appearances, 12 home runs, 21 stolen bases. Call it around a 145, 150 ISO. Positive run creator, though. All 3 stops, 101, 138, 147 WRC plus marks. Got on base in the last 2 stops in AAA, so after jumping a level, started getting on base over a 400 clip, was a 300 hitter at both levels, sub 20% strikeout rate, exactly 18.9 actually in both levels, and drawing a monster walk rate at both stops in AAA. York's kind of interesting. Dead min price. That's the kind of hitter who could get on base against Palante at least. Kind of hitter who doesn't seem to need the home run upside. Again, a 300 hitter with a 400 plus on base over like 350 AAA plate appearances after getting the bump. That's interesting. Doesn't make it an appealing stack, but maybe if let's say you've built out your 2 stacks, you got your 2 pitchers, and damn it, I left myself only the dead min price with second base open on DraftKings in this one lineup. Keep that guy in mind. Jared Triolo, mix and match quality at the absolute best. Disappointing, ugly kind of a year for him. Billy Cook, 21-23, hasn't done anything in 18 plate appearances yet. He's almost 26. I feel like if he was anybody, we would know it by now. 16 AAA home runs this year. Also 21 stolen bases. Good on base. He's had a very good AAA season this year. Over 430 plate appearances, 16 home runs, the 21 steals, roughly 277, 382, 486, 45 and a half slug, 122 and a 130 WRC plus in the 2 stops. It's just he's 25, so we're at the absolute upper border for how old you ought to be in AAA. But maybe it kind of came together for him this year. Another guy, bottom of the lineup of the Pirates, it's not exactly a great spot to mine talent. But if you need it for very cheap, maybe you get there, and then just wrap it around to like Brian Reynolds or something. Not a great stack, not an ideal spot by any means. On the Cardinal side, it's going up against Paul Skeens, so it's all really limited. I talked about Wynn and Burleson a little bit already when I was running down through there while I was talking about Skeens, but just to do it real quick, these guys are both hitting for decent average. They're mediocre at best in terms of getting on base, just hovering a little bit above league average for run creation. You do have 13 homers and 11 steals out of Wynn. You've got 21 homers with 9 steals out of Burleson. They're both reasonable contributors, but they're not guys that are going to draw you to the Cardinals, and specifically not against Paul Skeens. They are low strikeout, low walk, put the ball in play, but to do that, you've got to be able to make contact with the ball, and that's a different kind of equation against Paul Skeens. Goldie, 39, 29, 21 homers, 9 steals, but very limited otherwise. He and Arenado exactly at league average for run creation this year. Arenado's totally lost his power. 16 homers, a 128 ISO on weak contact. He's making essentially the same contact as Mason Wynn. It's pretty bad. Brendan Donovan makes a little bit better contact. He's slashing 270, 335, 400. 9 points above league average for run creation. 12 homers, 4 steals. Low strikeout, low walk. It's not going to be a problem for Paul Skeens to find a few Ks against these guys. And then you've got the guys who do strike out down the bottom of the lineup. Nootbaar's good. He fills multiple categories. 10 home runs, 7 steals this year. A 111 WRC plus in kind of a lost season over a half a season's worth of plate appearances. Still making excellent contact. Drawing some walks. Definitely a multi-category player who gets involved for a fair price. Against a lot of other pitchers, I'd be okay with rostering some Nootbaar, but in this spot, again, it just seems like a weakness. Jordan Walker striking out nearly 30% of the time, sub 200, sub 250. Pretty limited output in the show this year. Had a good season in the show last year. They've been messing with his time and with his level. Sent him back down this year. Should just stick. Hopefully he bounces back next season and starts his career off. But been really bad. Looks like a target for Skeens here. So do Pedro Pajes and Michael Ciani. No appeal whatsoever in those two hitters at the bottom of the lineup. Paul Skeens. And really nothing else. I wouldn't really roster too much cards against as like a hedge or an attack on what will be a big ownership position. Maybe you can justify a few shares from like 1 through 5. Maybe you throw a Nootbaar in there as a 6-man. But it's not a really appealing stack. Even as a contrarian, even as an angle, it's pretty low end. Pirates are pretty low end, just especially with Palante's ability to keep the ball down. So offenses are limited, and Palante's limited by strikeouts. He's probably number 2, though. It's probably pitcher, bats. And I would say the Pirates above the Cardinals just for the matchup. But really, I don't like the bats on either side of this one. So Skeens, then Palante for value. Coors Field. We will talk briefly about Mr. Kelly because he's in play. We will basically skip over Mr. Senzatella because he's not. Kelly's got an 18.7% strikeout rate, a 4.26 ERA with a 4.22 xFIP, over 57 innings in 10 starts. Last time out, faced Texas, went 4, 3 earned runs allowed, 3 strikeouts. Start before that, 7 innings against the Giants at San Francisco, a solid game. 2 earned runs, 6 hits, 8 strikeouts. 5 1/3 against the Dodgers, got lit up a little bit. 6 runs, 4 of them earned. 3 home runs allowed is problematic. 1 strikeout. That was the 31st. On the 25th, he gave up 4 earned runs at Fenway, 7 hits, another 2 home runs, 5 strikeouts, 3 walks. So 5 of the home runs that he's given up this season have come from those 2 games. He's given up 6 home runs since returning to action. And they came in those 2 games for 5 of them. And then number 6 was the game before those 2 on the 18th against Tampa Bay. He gave up a home run, 6 earned runs. So he hit a really bad stretch. He was out from April 15th to August 11th. Came back with a decent low strikeout game against Philly. Had those 3 bad ones. A good one over 7 and then a mediocre one over 4. So, mixed quality. But a guy who gets to face the Rockies, even with the Coors Field of it factored in, at 6,800 on DraftKings, you can probably include some Merrill Kelly shares as an SP2. You're chasing a little bit of the 27.7% strikeout rate that this team has with some problems against righties. It's not ideal. We know he's going to be threatened. This team does benefit from Coors just as much as the Diamondbacks will. Kelly's also giving up 12.1% barrels, 40.8% hard hits, 90.3 miles an hour of exit velo, and a 4.26% home run rate. But again, some chunk of that came from those 3 games. Small sample this year. We look back in time. Last year, Kelly was actually very good at limiting home runs. Pretty reasonable launch angle at 11.8 degrees, and that's still just 11.6 this year. So I think this is just happenstance and some bad luck mixed in. A couple of mistakes from a guy returning from injury. 2 years ago, it was just 2.6%. He was good at inducing weak and medium contact on a 14-degree average launch. So I don't think Kelly's exactly got a home run problem, a hard hit problem, or anything like that. Makes him playable at the absolute worst at Coors Field for those cheap prices. So I think you can go there. I really do. Not at all appealing at 83 on FanDuel as a standalone pitcher. And then Senzatella, just don't do it. I don't see why you would against the league-leading run creators. Sensatella has not pitched in the show this year. He's made 5 starts in the minor leagues, topped out at 4 innings, topped out at 5 strikeouts. Looking back in time, last year, 7 2/3, 13.3% strikeouts. 2 years ago, 13.1% strikeouts over 92 1/3. He is just a target for bats, and this is an ideal team to stack up. Diamondbacks lead the slate for a reason. They've got a lot of good hitters, a lot of good run creators. Ketel Marte at the top, 66-44. A little bit of a Coors Field tax on that, but he's been tremendous all year. 256 ISO, 147 WRC plus, 31 home runs, best year of his career. He is a tremendous option at 18.1% strikeouts and 10.4% walks. These guys are just see their way to first base and start scoring runs early and often in the day. 6,041 for Corbin Carroll. Honestly, he's kind of earned it. He's up to 19 homers, 28 steals. He scored 111 runs in a bad season. A 191 ISO, a 105 WRC plus now. It's amazing that he has turned this into not a bad season. Jock Peterson, 279, 400, 528, a great on-base option. A lot of power against a really, really bad righty from Jock Peterson. Love the option. 7.14 in the home run model, 13.7% barrels, 47% hard hits. He's hit 22 homers with a 249 ISO in 414 plate appearances. Christian Walker has 25 with a 227 ISO. A little bit higher strikeout this year, but he's also drawing walks, and we're hitting the ball quite a bit harder than we were last year. 11.2% barrels went up to 14.4, 40.1% hard hits went up to 47.3. Like Christian Walker, a lot in Coors Field. Pavin Smith for the cheap price. We've seen a little bit of a power surge. He's slashing 282, 347, 553 with a 143 WRC plus, 272 ISO and 7 home runs in a short sample. Not a bad option. Low strikeout, high walk, and has done that in the show before. Definitely interesting in the outfield for 35-33. No positional conflict with Walker is dynamite. Love it. Jake McCarthy for 5,000, 3,300. A little bit of a stretch on the price, honestly, especially with Smith there at 35. But he's very playable. He's having a good year. 288, 355, 414. Creating runs 15% better than average. Stealing 21 bases. Not bad. Junior Suarez continuing his just absolute assault on pitching in the second half. 28 home runs, a 224 ISO, 119 WRC plus. Tremendous year out of Eugenio after a very bad first half of the season. Had me very concerned. 53-42, no problem with it. Honestly, a little bit light on the DraftKings slate. Gabriel Moreno and Geraldo Perdomo at the bottom of the lineup, 35-32 and 45-32. Not bad. Perdomo gets on at a 347 clip. The catcher gets on at a 343, 104 and a 106 WRC plus. A team on which all 9 hitters are creating runs well above average. That's a 9-man average of a 125 WRC plus. So the full 9-man lineup is better, 25% better than the average hitter. And they're in Coors Field against Antonio Senzatella. The Diamondbacks don't score 20 runs tonight. Your money back for this show. 20's a stretch, but seems like a good spot. I do always talk about the Rockies when they're at home because I feel like they get underappreciated and they do have some interesting bats. Specifically, some of these guys at the bottom of their lineup. I kind of wish they would flip this and put these 4 guys up here with Brenton Doyle. I really like those 4 hitters. I like Brenton Doyle a lot. I think Tovar is a playable option at shortstop. Tovar's hit 23 home runs. He's got a 196 ISO, just a 91 WRC plus. Still has some improvement to do the on-base percentage, most notably, but a good way to fill shortstop from Coors Field. Charlie Blackmon at 47-33 in the leadoff spot, 9 home runs, 6 steals, 319 on base, just an 85 WRC plus. We're at the end of the line with Charlie, but low strikeout, reasonable walk rate against Kelly. You could get there. Doyle for 54-38 has 22 homers, 27 steals, exactly at league average for run creation, but offers more than that. A 189 ISO, little bit of a high strikeout rate, but it might not be quite a big problem against Kelly. Definitely makes excellent contact. So does Ryan McMahon from the left side. He's been diminished from what we expected after a surge out of the gate this year, but 19 homers, still getting on at a 330 clip. 92 WRC plus. That kind of defies the 330 on base. Should see an uptick from Coors Field here. Brendan Rodgers still hitting the ball hard at 43.9%, 41-31 across sites, 13 homers, 88 WRC plus. Mix and match quality second baseman in Coors Field at a cheap price. You could do worse than Rodgers. And then the interesting guys. Michael Talia, 48-37 across sites, 24 home runs and 407 opportunities with a 250 ISO. 199 plate appearances at 100. Goodman, barreling the ball and hitting it quite hard. 11 home runs and 199, not bad. 215 ISO out of him, but a lot of inconsistency. A 59 WRC plus, a 231 on base percentage is tragic. Nolan Jones, not having a good year, 212, 312, 310, 3 home runs, 4 steals in 264 plate appearances, very limited ISO, but that comes on a 45.6% hard hit rate, and this is a player we saw go 20-20 and 400 some odd plate appearances just last year. I think there's tons of upside for a cheap price at the bottom of the lineup for Nolan Jones, and then Jordan Beck is one of their better prospects. He's at the Mendoza line. He's at a 258 on base. He's 60 points worse than average creating runs over 163 opportunities. He's hit 3 home runs and stolen 6 bases. No output so far in the show, but the kid's supposed to be good, and I'm kind of a believer at a cheap price. So I think there's a ton of different ways to stack up the Rockies. I just don't love grabbing him against Merrill Kelly, who I do think has a decent day here at price. I'm more interested in this, but it's close. On FanDuel, it's just Rockies. I really don't care about the Kelly side, so probably more inclined to go to Rockies bats on the blue site than I am across town on DraftKings. But they're in play over there. It's not like they're expensive. By comparison to their opponents, they're downright cheap. Diamondbacks bats way up top. Merrill Kelly, but just barely. And then Rockies bats and do not play Antonio Senzatella. Last FanDuel game, we're going to miss that 6 o'clock out, and we are pushing our 6:30 start time for the football show. So let me get through this one quickly. Reed Detmers is a priority pitcher on this slate. 7,700, 8,500. Checks in with a 27.2% strikeout rate over 14 starts in the show this year. Was pitching tremendously in AAA. Last 2 outings since getting recalled on the 3rd, he faced the Dodgers. He struck out 10, gave up 2 earned runs over 6 innings. Faced the Twins at Minnesota the game after that. 6 innings, 8 strikeouts, 2 walks, 2 earned runs. Gave up a homer, but who cares? Looks tremendous against the worst team in baseball. Jonathan Cannon, even against the Angels, feels like a stretch. Cannon's got a 4.56 ERA, a 4.70 xFIP, 16% strikeout rate. Targetable enough for home run power, even for a weak team like this. I kind of prefer the Angels bats. I really don't see the lane for Jonathan Cannon to succeed. Even if he has an okay day as far as runs, gets through 5 innings, even at 5,000, I don't think they're going to win this game. And I really struggle to see the upside. Last time out, he had exactly that kind of a start. He gave up 3 earned runs, went 5 1/3 against Cleveland. He struck out 4, walked 1, no home run allowed, but he gave up 7 hits, took the loss. There's no real quality there. 5 2/3 of 1-run ball, 5 hits, 4 strikeouts at Baltimore. That's a more interesting start. Got the win there. But how often are the White Sox really going to give him the win? Don't like it. As far as bats go, minor playability out of some of the better White Sox hitters, and that's a stretch of a term. Lou Bob is the absolute priority in that lineup, followed by Andrew Vaughn. If you get... Oh, we do have the lineup. Let me just use the real thing. So as good as Luis Robert is, as much as I love him and love the talent there, he's having a bad year. I've talked about it a few times. It's kind of disguised by 14 homers and 22 steals in 384 plate appearances, but an 86 WRC plus, just a 163 ISO, sub 300 on base. It's been bad. His strikeouts are way up. His walks are slightly up. Barrels and hard hits are way down. 43-32, no problem price-wise, and he's very talented, but just struggling in this bad lineup. So we get Zach DeLoach in the leadoff spot as a lefty-lefty. That doesn't look all that appealing at all. Andrew Benintendi, lefty-lefty, just bat-on-ball skills. He's hit 17 home runs. He hasn't had the bat-on-ball skills this year. It's been a weird season from Benintendi, but there's no real appeal there. Vaughn, the righty, 3,300, 2,800, has 17 home runs, a 154 ISO. He's mix and match at the absolute best. Brian Ramos, I am interested in. He's slashing just 209, 253, 43, so it's weird to say that over 72 plate appearances. But he's hit 72 home runs. No, he's hit 2 home runs in his 72 chances, both of which have come since his recall, just last week, I want to say. And he is a good bat-on-ball, line drive, 270 to 300 kind of a hitter in his pedigree. So I kind of am interested in him if I'm going to the White Sox, but I'm just not going to the White Sox. It's really low end. Lennon Sosa, 26-23, multi-position eligible, has 4 home runs, hits the ball effectively hard in terms of hard hit rate, 42.6 for Ramos, 41.6 for Sosa, but both guys in the 5s for barrel rate so far. Limited options. Miguel Vargas, same thing, limited option. 4 home runs, 2 steals, 166, 259, 278, a 55 WRC plus in a bigger sample. Chucky Robinson, a mix and match quality catcher at the absolute best, and he's not even that. And then Jacob Maya at the bottom of the lineup has the wrong name every day. Jacob Amaya is Jacob Amaya over here, and I've never bothered to fix it because who cares? Min-price multi-position, 2,200 on DraftKings. Currently slashing 231, 286, 256 with no home runs. Not a good option. On the Angels side, they're stackable. They're probably the value stack of the day. They'll probably get some popularity going up against Cannon. You've got some playability around the guys with 7s in the home run model. You've also got Nico Cavadas there lingering at a 6.6. Nolan Chino at 5.6 is playable. You get reasonable on base from the top 3. Nobody's all that bad there. Taylor Woods hit 24 home runs this year. He's got a 191 ISO. You're followed by Zach Neto, 21 and 29 homers and steals. Probably their best player at this point, a 190 ISO, 115 WRC+. Their best player not on the injured list anyway. Shanuel for 36-28 has 13 homers, getting on base at a 345 clip. He's more of an on-base average kind of a hitter, low strikeout, high walk kind of a guy. Probably ultimately destined for the leadoff spot, which is where they ought to have him. A quality lefty bat who has demonstrated a little bit of ability to hit the ball out of the park, 13 home runs. But again, we're just buying correlated scoring there. Cavadas is a true power bat, 2,400, 2,500 at first base across sites. Positional conflict with Shanuel over there, so you get one or the other. He's hit 3 home runs and 73 chances, a lot of inconsistency mixed in, 35.6% strikeouts. Logan O'Hoppe, plenty of great contact, high strikeout catcher, but good for contact, 19 home runs, just a 164 ISO. You'd like to see him improve the output on that kind of contact. But a good catcher option for just 36-29, particularly if you're building stacks of Angels, and a playable one-off catcher, honestly, against Jonathan Cannon. Mickey Moniak, mix and match quality from the left side, 14 homers, 7 steals, and a lot of mediocrity. Michael Stefanich, just a contact hitter who isn't making good contact, 221, 302, 253. Eric Wagaman, totally skippable, 47 WRC plus over his 16 plate appearances. And Jordan Adams, a little bit of playability maybe at the bottom. He did hit that home run after we talked about him the other day. He's holding down a decent barrel and hard hit in his minuscule microscopic sample size. 114 WRC plus so far. Just kind of mix and match from Moniak down. Top 4 are where it's interesting, or top 5 is where it's interesting. Detmer's far and away the best thing from this game. Angels bats. White Sox bats if you gotta, but you really probably don't wanna. And no Jonathan Cannon from me. That's the end of your FanDuel slate. You're dismissed. DraftKings only for this one. Ignore FanDuel pricing. If you're playing that 2-game late slate that they threw up for like a probably $50 first place prize, I wish you luck. These are the correct projections and home run numbers on the FanDuel side, but these will probably be the wrong prices. I didn't look as to whether those are. Actually, no, those are the correct prices for that slate because that's where I got them. So know that that's where that's coming from. Who cares? Wasting time. All right, so end of your DraftKings slate. Spencer Arrighetti for 82 against a very low strikeout Padres team. It's not all that appealing. Arrighetti is truly talented, though. 27.4% strikeouts on the season, over 131 and 2/3 in 26 outings is not bad. 4.72 ERA, but a nice 4.03 xFIP underneath that appeal. 12.4% swinging, 29.7% CSW. It's just the walk rate at 10.6% is problematic. The contact that he's allowed is not ideal against a team that can go find contact. Whether they deliver home run upside is a different story, but there's a lot of contact in this Padres lineup. So I don't love the spot for Arrighetti, even at price. I think he's moderately playable, but not ideal. If you're building 150, you should have a little bit. If you're building 20, you probably don't need to go there. Darvish at 8,000. Pretty limited season. He's made 13 starts, thrown 64 innings, 2 starts since returning, 2 2/3 in the first one. Was pretty mediocre, 3 earned runs, 4 strikeouts, 2 walks. Not bad in the second one, though. It was against Seattle, so it's difficult to tell. 7 hits, 2 earned runs, 2 home runs allowed, which is a problem, but struck out 5 and got the win over 5 innings. For 8,000 against a low strikeout, pretty dangerous, pretty elite Astros lineup, I think Darvish is probably just skippable on a 5-inning day. I don't think you're getting much more than 5, even if things are going well. And he's going to be pretty limited in that spot. So, seems dangerous. For the full season, he's given up a 3.42% home run rate. Over the threshold there, over the threshold there. I feel like he can throw some Astros at you, Darvish. In terms of their bats, we've got the Padres lineup, not the Astros lineup. Presumably, the Astros are going to roll out pretty similar version of their lineup as to what's there in front of you. Altuve, star second baseman, 52-35, slashing 301, 356, 445. Even the absence, a little bit of a disappearance of ISO, 144 ISO on the season, still has 19 home runs, has stolen 21 bags. His creator runs 30% better than average. If he's not the best second baseman in baseball, he's right there with whoever that might be. 61-41 for Jordan Alvarez is a tremendous buy. 34 home runs, slashing 308, 393, 568, 260 ISO. Creator runs 67% better than average. Doesn't strike out, draws a ton of walks. It's going to ruin Yu Darvish's day. 48-32 is pretty fair for Alex Bregman, who's now slashing 256, 313, 443, a 187 ISO. Creator runs 15% better than average, 23 home runs on the season, 40+% hard hits for a guy with 13.6% strikeouts. Alex Bregman's a tremendous option at third base for those prices. Kyle Tucker back, 13.6% barrels, 44% hard hits on the season, 20 home runs, 10 stolen bases in only 293 plate appearances, 303 ISO. Imagine if he'd been here all year, where those numbers might be. Jainer Diaz, a good catcher option at 4,600. He's slashing 301, 327, 449. Plays every single day. 572 plate appearances from a guy with catcher eligibility is dynamite just on its own. A 119 WRC plus. He's excellent for the money. John Singleton, 29-26, mix and match quality, 13 home runs, a moderately powerful lefty with a lot of strikeouts. Jeremy Pena, the definition of a league average kind of a shortstop, 15 homers, 17 steals, 271, 310, 402. Him and Mason Wynn are very similar kind of options. For a fair price, nothing wrong with the price point, but you're expecting just some correlated scoring. You're expecting just a limited occasional output. It's not an everyday star. Ben Gamel mix and match, Jake Myers mix and match at the bottom of the lineup. Myers does have 12 homers and 10 steals in 479 chances, but is an 87 WRC plus. Padres confirm lineup. Luis Arias, 4,200, slashing 322, 356, 394. Good table setter for Fernando Tatis. Tatis at 51-36, nice buy. Against Arrighetti, who's given up a 3.29% home run rate, nearly 40% hard hits, 89 miles an hour of exit velo. Arrighetti's gettable for power. Tatis is on the board, 14% barrels, 54.6% hard hits, a 9.46 in the home run model. He's followed by Profar at 7.44 in the home run model. Jerkson's got 22 homers to Tatis's 18 in roughly half the plate appearances. 205 ISO versus a 176 ISO, but Profar's still at a 139 WRC plus, outpacing Tatis by 3 percentage points. We'll see how it holds up, but it's a strong year from Jerkson Profar, and honestly, his price hasn't gone up all year on DK. 4,300 for that kind of output, take it. Manny Machado, 49.35, still 102 cheap, at least on DraftKings. 35 on FanDuel is a much higher price. Effective year out of Manny, 275, 326, 468, a 193 ISO, 121 WRC plus, 26 homers. Don't really know what the problem is to keep him under 5,000, but I'm glad he is. Merrill for 47.33, having a tremendous year, 23 homers, 16 steals, a 209 ISO, 127 WRC plus, 11% barrels, 44.3% hard hits. Finally, a better spot in the lineup, hitting fifth. Bogarts mix and match quality this year, 10 home runs, 11 steals, 260, 305, 379. It's not great, but it's also not tragic. He's highly playable any given slate. He's also low strikeout, low walk, puts a lot of balls in play. Cronenworth for 4,000, 3,000. First and second eligible on both sites. We're down to 244, 324, 394, 150 ISO, 107 WRC plus, 16 homers. This is Jake Cronenworth. This is the guy I expected all those plate appearances ago when I said he wasn't going to hold down the 3 spot all year. That's because this is the hitter that he is. It's okay. Those are okay numbers. You can play that guy for those prices. The expectations were just weird for Cronenworth coming into this season. Donovan Solano, 27-28, mix and match quality. Solid line drive hitter with 292, 348, 412 slash line over 273 chances. You can absolutely play that guy for multi-position and cheap price on both sites. And then our guy Higgy to round out the show. 16 home runs. I hope the Padres are playing at home in the last show of the season so that I can talk about Kyle Higashioka last overall. I love Higgy. 16 homers in 236 chances. We're still short of the plate appearance totals from the previous seasons. We're not going to double the home run total, but maybe we'll get to 18 before he gets to those samples. Just a monster season out of him. He's not good. He's not anybody's favorite, maybe this guy. He's not anybody's favorite catcher in the league. I still prefer Gary Sanchez in terms of actual home run ability. But Higgy's having a nice season for power. 268 ISO, 16 homers in a quarter of a season of plate appearances. He's very cheap, never got priced up for the power output. He's also high strikeout, low walk. He could put a lot of zeros in your lineup, but as a cheap 9 hitting catcher against a guy who gives up a little bit of power, you can do worse than Higgy. That's your up and down, guys. It is 6:11. I've talked about all these pitchers a lot. Paul Skeens is easy. Reed Detmers is obvious. Chalk of the day for sure for Reed Detmers, probably on both sides. On DK, you pair Reed Detmers with any of the mix of guys in the red and the orange, and I don't think it's completely crazy to take a few shots if you're not against taking some risk to go there and there, or even there and there, although I think Olsen is a lot more challenged here or even here. So any of these green guys in combination with Reed Detmers saves you a hell of a lot of money on the mound as a cheap pairing. And honestly, on a day where I still don't fully trust Lugo, if Skeens doesn't have his day for that gigantic price difference, there's really nobody on this slate that it's like, that guy's definitely going to burn you if you try and go cheap. Not Lugo, not Yamamoto in 5 innings, not Imanaga, as good as he might be. Not Fried, good as he might be. Not Ranger, good as he might be. So I have no issues getting into the bargain bin and pairing some of these guys with him and saving money, and then pairing some of these guys with the other obvious, red and orange guys through here. Yamamoto limited by innings, but good matchup for strikeouts. We're not dealing with anything beyond these medians, though, so you probably don't want to pay for it. Manaya has a little bit of upside, but that's a very high price on FanDuel, much more playable there. Fried, Suarez, both playable on both sides. Kelly, playable on both sides, but limited by Coors Field, obviously. Olsen, limited by the opponent with KC. Jake Irvin, same thing with the Mets, but not poorly priced. He's the bottom of the board in that barrel, in that value barrel. Savali, just limited by the matchup against the Phils, but talented enough to get through it for the cheapest price in that group, so I don't mind him. Arrighetti and Darvish I just talked about on DK. All these guys are kind of nose. Palante is going to be the most successful out of that group at the bottom. He's just going to limit the Pirates' upside, though. There's not really a ton of DFS appeal. You definitely would prefer any of those guys for strikeout potential. That's your home run board. Pause it, freeze frame it, use it. You've also got access to all those numbers on the website. I'm going to punch out. I'm going to update stats real quick. It's 6:15 now. We'll be back in about 15 minutes for the start of that football show. Might be slightly delayed, so let people know when you join the chat over there. If it's 6:33 and I'm not there yet, just hang out. Show will start. I just got to fire up some stuff over on Ace Mind to get where we need to be. Thank you, guys. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button. Show us a little love. Help us out a little bit. Good luck out there tonight. Somebody go win something. We'll see you in just a few minutes for football.